5, executing query. Now the query from the API is executed using execute query, and we'll actually load that up just as a string variable. When we look at that, you'll see how that fits together. Step 6, processing result. After step 5, the system basically does two things. It processes an output and retrieves the values from your query. And then step 7, closing statement. The result set and statement needs to be closed explicitly. And you'll find there's two closing statements. There is your result set, which is still pulling from the database. And then step 8, which is we need to actually closing connection. So the last stage is to disconnect ourselves or the API from the database. So we no longer have that open connection using resources. So we're going to jump into our Java database connection example. And we're going to do that with what we call the university database. Let's start with a basic overview of MySQL. And you can go to dev.mysql.com. And you'll see here we can look up more information. They have the download of the newest version. This is a full SQL database package. And some of these you can actually go in there and if you're doing database management,
let's start with
they can spread across
overview of
usually you don't want to go more than 5 servers, but it is designed to go up to 5 servers kind of setup with terabytes of data in there. For a developer on the programming side, we usually want to install something like MySQL locally. So on my setup, it has no network connections. It doesn't auto start on the boot up of the computer, and I have it locked down. That way, if I use some kind of simple password or something like that for one of my demos, it doesn't go anywhere. No one can access it. Now, another option to MySQL is also the SQLite. And you can go to the sqlite.org, read more about it, and download it. It has a couple limitations that you're not going to see in your full-scale MySQL or Oracle or SQL, but most of it will transfer over. And so for a small project, you can actually use it as the backend for storing your data. You can also integrate it or upgrade it into MySQL because most of the SQL commands are the same. And when you go into the MySQL, which is a single versus SQLite, you can certainly go down to downloads, and then there's also the connectors. So devmysql.com/download/connector/j. And I bring this up because it depends on how you've set up Eclipse for your interface and your IDE, and it depends on what you need and how exactly on your setup as far as the connectors. We'll look at that a little bit more closer. In the MySQL, it isn't Oracle based, so you'll have to set up an account. If you don't have one, you have to log in. It's all free. As long as you're not doing like the enterprise with all the support and help on it, you don't have to pay for it. It's an open source. Now, once you've installed MySQL, and if you do SQLite, you're not going to have these interfaces. It'll all be done from Java code. But once you've installed MySQL, it's going to add in a terminal window and then also the workbench, which is just a nice GUI interface for MySQL Server. And we're not going to do anything with the workbench. You can play with it certainly because a lot of times you don't have the workbench installed on your computer, especially if the MySQL is set up on a different server and you're remote accessing it. Especially if you're in the classroom or something like that, they probably have sent you your login information so you can get into the shell. Quick note though is if you do your own MySQL, just note that I kept this as a local host. You can actually see it down here, root localhost. No outward connections. And that's just to protect my computer. Once you start opening those, you have to be aware of your passwords. And since I'm doing demos, I want to keep my passwords really simple, so that's not the focus of the program. I had to log out and relog back in. So once you've gone in there, you should have this. A lot of times your interface might be web-based if it's a remote MySQL connection you're working with, and it'll prompt you for your username and password. In this case, mine is on my computer. It automatically has me log in as admin, so I have full admin rights. And then we always like to start by, at least I do, is show databases. And these are the current databases on here. They have some different information on them that is part of the basic setup, and some examples like Sakilla and World are both example databases that automatically load with MySQL. For this example, we're going to create a database, and it's going to be university. We'll do capital there, university. Don't forget our semicolon, and time. You can see how long it took, 0.69 seconds. And of course, if we go show databases, you'll see now that there is a university in there. And we want to go ahead and use university. That means that whatever we do, any commands that we have in here for tables or whatever, are now going to be going into the university database. So now our database is changed. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Let's see, here we go. Set. Okay. A little bit more so we get the nice big print so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and create our table. And this has all been prepared, so I don't have to go through and redo it all the time. You'll see here we're going to do create a table engineering student, and then we have student ID as an integer, not null, department variable character 25 long, first name, last name, pass out year, university rank, primary key. In creating this, note a couple things. First, we created a table, engineering students, and we've gone ahead as part of the create setup here. And the things I want you to note is that we have our integer. So our student ID is an integer, our department is a variable character, and it's 25 long. And the reason I say that that is really important is when we flip back on over here, if you remember from our, there we go. If you remember from our data types, here's our variable character, and in Java language that's a string. A string doesn't say, hey, it's only 25 long. And so you got to be a little careful when you're pushing and pulling this data, especially when you're writing the data from Java into the SQL, that you check for that length of that string. And then the integer is of course an integer. And of course your other data types, you can see how they follow suit. But with variable character, be very aware of that is designated 25 characters long. And we're going to go ahead and insert some data in here. Here we go. We'll go ahead and insert into engineering students values. And this is going to be the student ID. And it's also the primary key. So keep in mind that that is a unique value in there. And then we have CSE, Computer Science Engineering, Karan, Akaria, 2018, 1272. So there's our pass out year, 2018, and ranked, I guess, number 1272. I'm not sure where the, oh, that's a university ranking. There we go. And then we have some prepared data, which I just went ahead and pasted in. So we have a whole bunch of individuals in our database now. And it's the same line over and over again. Insert into engineering students, values, and then you have your list of values. And we can see that by doing a simple select. We'll do, star. So it's going to select everything, one of our hot characters. If you're not familiar with SQL, get a setup on there and look it over. And you can also download a cheat sheet from somewhere with all the different commands in there. I myself do a lot of consulting, and so I'm always jumping around from one platform to another. If you're doing that kind of work, it's more important to understand the limitations and the advantages of different systems, and then you have your cheat sheets for putting together stuff really quickly when you need it. And you can see here the data we just put in there. There's our student IDs, department, first name, last name, pass out year, and university rank. And we'll go ahead and do one query in here real quick. We already did one query. We're going to do two queries. We did select star from engineering, and then we're going to go ahead and select student ID, department, first name, last name. So you can actually choose what you select instead of doing the asterisks. Where student ID equals 10202. And when we go ahead and execute that in here, oops, there we go. you'll see that it returns the one individual with that student ID here. So let's take this back into our Eclipse, because we're still doing the setup. So you have your MySQL Server setup, or you did SQLite with a little bit different setup going on there. And let's flip on over and see what's going on with Eclipse. So in Eclipse, we're going to go in new. We'll start a new project. We'll call this JDBC. It's our JDBC project. Whoops. Select a wizard. I forgot where I was going on there. It's a Java wizard. We're looking for this project. Java project. There we go. And we're going to call this, there. Now we're in the right spot. JDBC package. That way everything will be bundled in there in the same package. And finish it. Create. All right. So you can see right here we have our new JDBC package we're working with. Now at this point there's a lot going on as far as your options. If you set this up for doing database management, which I did not, I'm going to show you the two different ways. You can go under Windows and under Preferences, and in this list you'll see database management, and then you can just go in there and set it up this way, and it'll pull in that information for your SQL connections. Now, if you did not, and you downloaded the MySQL, it does have an option to download the Java Connects, which would put it into wherever you installed that at, which is default under your C drive program files. Now, on mine, I didn't. I downloaded the connection separately. And there's two different ways. We can go under Project, and under the build project, give that a moment to come up. Oops, I mean properties, there we go. The project properties and the Java build path. This same window can be accessed by right-clicking on your package we're working on, and then we can go down to properties, and you'll see the same window opens up. And we're going to go under Java build path. We're going under libraries. So these are libraries we want to include in our setup. And then I click on our module path, and at this point you'll see add external jars here. Now again, if you haven't already pre-set up in Eclipse, you can just add jars and it'll be in the jar library. So there's different possibilities there. But I did a download, so I'm going to go add external jars. And I happen to keep mine on my D volume under my SQL. And you'll see my SQL connector Java, and this is MySQL 8.0. And I just go in here, oops, there we go. I just go ahead and open this up, and you'll see right here it has my connector Java. Once I set that in, it's now added those packages, and there's hundreds of actual subfiles in there, and it's all set to go. And I can apply and close this window. And now I'm ready to go ahead and start writing my script and start building a program in here. And let's go ahead and go under source, new, and we'll go ahead and put in a new class in here, and we'll just go call it JDBC. Same as the package. We'll go ahead and finish that. And we're set up with a new class in here. And once we've got this set, the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and import all of our Java setup in here. So we have the Java connection, and now we want to go ahead and import it. And when we look at this, we can see we have our connection, and remember, two of these have to be closed explicitly, and that's your connection and when you create the statement. You have your driver manager, so when it goes in there, that's the piece that connects to, actually does the connection to the database, the drivers that convert everything in the code in there. So you have your connection to the database, you have the code that converts it, you have your result, so you're going to get a result off of your query, then you have your exception, so if you have an error throws or something like that, that's where that's going, and of course the actual statement that you're going to send to the SQL server. And of course we want our Java to be able to actually run, so we'll put our main in there, public static void main, and it's going to throw the SQL exception. So you'll see right here, that's what we're working with, and there's our Java SQL exception on there. So the first thing we're going to need on our setup, put that in here, is going to be our connection information. we need to know the username. I'm just going to call it string uname equals, in this case, I created a user, Richard_SimplyLearn, and then I created a password, my password. Remember, this is a local host, so you probably don't want to have a simple password like that, but this whole database is locked down on just this computer. There's no outside network access or anything like that to get in here. And then, of course, this is a separate user, so it's not even my admin or root user. And then we go ahead and put a query right here. In this case, we'll start with our most basic query. If you remember, we already did that on our, at the very beginning, select star from engineering students. And we're going to use that query in our code to start off with. And then another really common thing when you're setting this up is that we also want to test it and see, hey, did we import our package correctly? Is it set up correctly? So you remember we came in and we imported our MySQL connector jar file. In the code, we would just want to make sure it's working correctly, and that's what this is. It says try class for name, and then it has our com.mysql.cj.jdbc driver, saying, hey, do we have the driver for this? That's all that's doing. And if not, then it's going to print an error so we can find out why it doesn't have that driver. And then next we want to actually start getting into our actual code. And in here we're going to do a try, because whenever you do any kind of major connection, you want to make sure that you're looking for your errors, you're not going to mess on anything. And we're going to do a catch. And so we're looking for any kind of SQL exception error. And for this demo, we'll just do, print it out. So, oops, wrong spot. Goes into the catch section. There we go. So we'll print it out over down here as far as the error on there. And it's an SQL exception, so it's still looking for the code, which we haven't put in here yet. And this is really where the magic really starts to happen, because we have our connection. And there we go. And you'll see that the connection is, that's all this is right here. Here's our connection up here. And we pop it down here. We have a connection, we'll just call it con. Do one in, so keep it uniform. There we go. And this is going to go to the driver. So in other words, right here, we're going to go ahead and need the driver manager. And that's where we imported here. And it says get connection, because that's part of the driver manager. And we have our URL. Let's see, and we of course forgot to put the URL in up above. So let's go ahead and go back there and put that in. And the URL comes out as a JDBC MySQL. That is registered with my computer. So my computer has, when it's running the MySQL, this is the local host. In this case, we call it university. That's where this comes from. And that's all part of your MySQL setup. If you're working with a remote database, you'd want to get this information from the remote, whoever set the database up, so that you have this particular line of where to call. And so when we go back down here, we have